Good day, and welcome to the Plant Engineering webcast, How to Manage Your Operations Maintenance Strategy Post-COVID-19, sponsored by Dude Solutions. I'm your moderator, Kevin Parker, and I'm happy to join you today on behalf of Plant Engineering. Here are some tips to help you get the most from today's webcast. If you're experiencing issues with your slides or audio, refresh your browser or click the Refresh Media button directly under the presenter's picture. You can control the volume of this webcast by adjusting the volume on your computer or by adjusting the volume on the platform itself. If you are having technical problems with audio or the slide presentation, click on the question mark at the top right-hand corner of your screen to access a list of system checks to try before contacting an online technician. If you do need a technician, type a message in the Ask a Question box, and someone will get to you as quickly as possible. You can also type questions for our speaker in the Ask a Question box. The live Q&A session will begin after the presentation concludes. Today's webcast is being recorded. You will receive an email within a week with a link to the on-demand event. To download a certificate of completion, a PDF copy of the presentation, and additional resources, use the Event Resources tab on the left-hand side of the screen. Those documents will also be available with the on-demand version of this webcast. I'd now like to introduce today's presenter, Paul LaChance. Paul LaChance has devoted his entire career to optimizing maintenance teams by enabling data-driven decisions and actionable insights. He wrote his first CMMS system in 2004 and has since been intensively involved in designing and directing CMMS and EAM systems. A regular speaker at national trade shows, he's been featured at IMTS, Fabtech, and SMRP, as well as having contributed to several industry magazines. He currently serves as the Senior Manufacturing Advisor for Dude Solutions. Thank you for joining us today, Paul. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate everybody joining our webinar today, How to Manage Your Operations in this post-COVID-19 era that we're moving our way into. So today's agenda, we'll talk about what have we learned. We'll also go through some short, mid, and long-term plans and kind of wind it all up with this new normal that we're finding ourselves in. So we're going to start right off the bat with a poll. On your screen, you will see some questions appear. So if you could take a moment to answer that, which best represents your organization currently? How have your operations been impacted by COVID-19? Kind of ranges from we're busier than ever, continuing business as usual, things maybe haven't changed a whole lot for you. Maybe you're more diminished, you're limited to essential personnel and you're in reduced operations mode. Or you're suspended, you're really in shutdown or close to shutdown mode. So if you could take a moment to answer those questions. And I'm going to go ahead and just let people have a little bit more of an opportunity for these to come in. Okay, we'll see just a couple more coming in. So go ahead and continue to answer this for a moment here, but I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some of the results. And the range is a small percentage of us are totally shut down, which I'm really sorry to hear, but I'm glad you're taking advantage of this time to participate in webinars like this. The vast majority of us are in that sort of range between business as usual and limited to essential personnel. And then I would say the third of the group is the busier than ever, and you can imagine PP&E and other essential services. So thank you very much for taking this time to answer that survey. So we're going to talk first about industry impact. What have we learned so far in this pandemic era? So it's a very good news, bad news kind of story here. And as you can imagine, it ranges depending upon who you are and where you are. This data on the screen right now was taken earlier in the pandemic. I'm using a sort of a forward looking back then. The first one on the left there, starting with the challenges, 78% or so are anticipating financial impact. These left numbers are coming from the National Association of Manufacturing as a large survey. 53% anticipated change in operations, 35% change in disruption in supply chain. On the right-hand side is a survey from PwC, a reputable consulting firm polling tons of manufacturers. And it's a very similar kind of story. Although these surveys were taken earlier in the pandemic, I think this was in late March, early April, this data has rung true from what we've seen. We saw this with our own clients. We have obviously a lot of clients using our system, and we can track very anonymously. We can look at particular types of work orders. And we saw absolute spikes in work orders that were related to the pandemic. So coronavirus, sanitization, PPE related, big spikes on that chart on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we started to see an absolute drop in the number of more traditional work orders and a big spike in COVID-19 related work orders. Not unexpected, of course, as we saw manufacturing activity decrease and what work we are doing, big spikes in work orders related to the coronavirus. This is a chart that came from another industry partner that measures the utilization of assets and equipment. And it's an interesting chart. This is from an organization called Machine Metrics, and they publish this data quite frequently. I find it fascinating as it's kind of a tracker. The same way we might look at COVID-19 trackers for cases and so forth. It's measuring utilization of essentially assets during the pandemic. So 2018, the red line, 2019, the green line, and 2020, the blue line. 2018 was a huge year for manufacturers. 2019 was a little bit lower. The good thing about 2020 is it started off pretty strong, not as good as 2018. And then, bam, sucker punch, COVID-19 hits, and we see that blue line just drop off. The good news is, relative to the historical data, this utilization is actually starting to creep back up. It is a long ways off. So you're not alone if you're in a diminished mode there. I don't think that's any news to you. But I do believe the good news here is that we are starting to see, just like we're seeing leveling off of cases and everything, we're seeing more manufacturing activity. So that's a positive sign, and I always like to gravitate towards these positive signs. Industry impacts changing and improving. I want to underline the word improving the way we work. This is all good news. Work from anywhere. It's forcing us to be lean manufacturing, lean maintenance operations, efficiency, doing more with less. It's also giving us a jump start on the, quote, changing workforce. This is a topic that I've lectured on quite a bit over the past year. 50% of facilities personnel, operations, maintenance, and otherwise, are set to retire in the next 10 years. Half of your team is going to retire in the next 10 years. We are an aging society. The baby boomers are essentially the largest group that will be retiring. We also have a massive amount of young people entering the workforce, and we're finally doing a good job at attracting younger talent to manufacturing, maintenance operations type positions. We have work to do on that, but we're starting to make progress. But you have a large percentage of very young people coming into these roles and a large percentage of retiring folks leaving. You've got to capture your veterans team's knowledge and document their legacy. This is getting hyper-focused during a pandemic. You might have that veteran team member who might be have immunocompromised, can't come in, or is working from home a little bit more, and you feel it when you don't have that veteran who knows how to change that filter blindfolded in a hurricane, and they're not necessarily as available. We've got to capture that veterans team's knowledge. We had to do this anyway, but the pandemic is really forcing us to have to do that. Your younger people, we've got to create training programs, mentorship. We've got to train that next generation of workers. And then there's all kinds of new tools, digital tools, software, thermal cameras, this next generation of technology. We have to make sure we have those skills to do it. So this is a jumpstart on the changing workforce. And again, we've been talking about this for a while. It's been coming for a while. It's only going to become more of an impact. But this pandemic has kind of brought it more into focus. So we're going to break this up into short, medium, short, mid, and long term. The short term, which we're in, and thankful to say we're really starting to leave. I often will call this the freeze. So it's all about organizing your staff processes and prioritizing work. Your response assessment, how is it affecting your operations? We saw from the poll this: you have a population of people that are very busy, and you have a population of people that are very slow, and of course you got people in the middle of that. So we'll kind of break that out both ways. We've got social distancing impact. There's all kinds of new duties that we might not have done in the past: disinfection, PP&E, changes to our workflow, even physical layout changes in our operations. And then, of course, the big work from anywhere. That's going to impact everybody, whether you're busy or slow. So let's start with the busy group. So how are you affected if you're busy? Well, it is all about thinking and being lean and efficient, optimizing your work order management. We're going to go through examples of all these, but getting your jobs done with reduced or essential staff in place, prioritization of work, preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance will be essential, making sure you have your parts, and it's all about solid communication and documentation. So we're going to walk through a couple of these examples. So prioritizing and optimizing your preventive and your corrective maintenance. You're busy. If you're super busy, you need to make sure you've got good visibility. You still got to get those PMs done. That top left there, that's a calendar that shows what PMs are going to hit us. Have that available. Share that with your production people. Know, bottom right here, know the work orders that you have to deal with and have them very clear and very organized, and make sure they're properly prioritized. Calculated criticality. I've kind of highlighted that column. You can see at the top of it highlighted in yellow. This is a list of all of my in-process work orders. Could be preventive maintenance, could be corrective maintenance. A lot of times people will prioritize their work simply based on a priority field. All work order screens have a priority field. Been doing that forever. High, medium, low. It's not enough to just go by priority. If you can take priority and combine it with the asset criticality, you can calculate what is the overall calculated criticality, sometimes called a RIME index. In our system, the lower the calculated criticality, the more important that work order is. And if you kind of train your eye down those three columns, priority, asset criticality, and calculated criticality, the priority list, we've got high priority work orders that are being outranked by medium priority work orders. Why? Because the assets are more essential for those work orders. So it's all about, you're busy. You got to make sure you're getting to those correct work orders properly prioritized. And again, don't just trust a priority field. The combination of priority and how critical is that asset will get you hyper-focused on those proper work orders. Avoiding stockouts. Stockouts are when you're missing that critical spare part when you need it. There is nothing worse than you have downtime and the part you need is not on that shelf. And even worse, with the disruptions to the supply chain, it's going to take you longer to get it. Those are killers. Avoid stockouts. Your CMMS system should tell you when you're low on parts. I've highlighted on both screens there, like the parts you're low on should be right on your dashboard. You should be able to get an email notification when you're low on parts. You should be able to easily look up and see what parts are available, reserved, and on back order. Don't get caught in a stock out. Downtime is bad enough. Or you've got a scheduled PM on a critical asset and you don't have the parts to get it done. Avoid those scenarios. Good CMMS will help you with that. Suspend non-critical PMs. I've highlighted non-critical. I'm rarely talking about slowing down preventive maintenance. But if you just can't get it all done, you're super busy, and you've got to triage what you're going to get done, it may be acceptable to turn off appropriate PMs for non-essential activities. So a good CMMS system is going to allow you to select, say, maybe it be a production line or a building or a category of assets, and just go ahead and turn those to inactive. Just make sure you turn those back on when your operations level back off to normal levels. Communicate and document. I'm going to work counterclockwise around this screen, upper left. Make sure your work order screens are capturing appropriate information. Is it a COVID-19 related work order? That's the cause. Is it disinfection? Is it sanitization? Is it a PPE related thing? Capture that information in your work orders. You need to make sure that you're properly documenting the work you do, because you're eventually going to have to report on this stuff. Bottom left-hand corner. Your dashboard should show you a good summary of all the work that is ongoing in your operations. Number of work orders, both for you and your team. How many are preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance? How many are overdue? And that should be on your mobile device and your regular browser. Bottom right corner. Set up charts and KPIs to show the progress you're making around doing your work orders, COVID-19 and otherwise. Upper right-hand corner. Put messages. Remember, you're often working from anywhere these days. You may not be in the same rooms or meeting with your team as face-to-face as you used to. Use the available communication tools in your CMMS, both in the regular browser and your mobile device, so you make sure you can share appropriate information. Next group is more in that slow range. I think there are valuable lessons for this group for all of us, but this might be a little more tilted for those of us that unfortunately are a little bit more slowed down. So you might be in a shutdown, partial or complete. It's an opportunity to chip away at deferred maintenance or your work order backlog, spending PMs if not appropriate, and then a great time for internal assessment, analysis of your asset effectiveness, and capital budget planning. So let's go through some examples in this area. So if you're slowed down, you still need to make sure you're performing inspections, building checks. We had some clients that we know that were totally shut down. You still need to go and inspect. You still need to make sure there's no leaks and there's no problems. Set up basic preventive maintenance routines that might even be one-off or temporary, that will give you the instructions you need to perform these checks. Because eventually when you're going to get busy, you don't want to find out that something's been sitting leaking for a long time. It's going to require maintenance before you have to get started on it. Chip away at your maintenance backlog. Now, I know personally in this pandemic, I've moved beyond all those nagging tasks that I've wanted to do in my house and my yards, and I've organized my closets, and I've got my basement and attic done. I've moved on to things like I'm repotting plants now, and I'm washing outside windows. This is an excellent opportunity for you to be doing the same type of work within your operations. This is going to get better. You're eventually going to have to get back to normal. And you will be in a better place if you chip away at those nagging, ongoing tasks that you just couldn't get to in more normal operations time. Same concept that we talked about earlier with that calculated criticality. Focus on those assets that are most critical to your operations and work down from there. It's only going to put you in a better place when your operations resume. Suspend PMs if appropriate. Again, same kind of story for the busy people, but in this case here, you don't want to pollute your work orders screen with a bunch of PMs that just won't ever get done because you didn't need to do them because the assets weren't operating. A good CMMS system will have like a site closure. That's that top screen there where you can shut off all PMs, and that might be just for one building or for one aspect of your operations, or selectively shut them down. Again, I cannot emphasize strongly enough, turn them back on when you get back to normal. But I just hate seeing PMs that are just there and getting generated to only get deleted later. You don't want to pollute your work orders data with PMs that just don't need to get done. It's a great time to analyze the effectiveness of your operations, your asset effectiveness, repair versus replace. There are all kinds of charts and metrics and KPIs in a good CMMS system that are going to pinpoint where you need to make improvements, where you're doing well, where you might have challenges. Use those available metrics. This is a good example. This is the asset lifecycle analysis chart that we have in our Asset Essentials system, in our CMMS. Basically, I've got two assets here, an air handler unit and a boiler unit. So each of them gets a grade. The air handler unit's got a grade of a B. It's like school, A to F. If you look at the following columns, the third column there, it says years left. This air handler unit's an older asset. It's been around for a while. It's 5 years past how long we thought this asset was going to live. So it's just kind of an older asset, but it's doing very well. That's why it's in green with the event trend and the cost trend. The boiler unit, which has got a grade of a D, is a newer asset. It theoretically has life in it, but it's not doing very well. If you analyze those two assets, starting with the air handler unit on the left, those two charts, the costs are going down. Over time, those costs have been decreasing. It's a good sign. Its frequency of failure, the number of days between corrective maintenance work orders, essentially, is increasing. Another very positive sign. Although, remember, that's an older asset. The boiler unit, the newer asset, its costs are rising and its frequency of failure is getting worse. And that's not a good sign. If you don't have a good CMMS that can take a look at your assets and analyze that effectiveness, and you're getting ready to, say, do capital expenditure planning for next year, in this case your HVAC-related budget, it could be any type of asset, you might think, well, and forget you're looking at my chart for a second here, you might think, well, we ought to replace that air handler unit. That thing's a dinosaur. It's been there forever. It's got to be on its last legs. The reality is it's the boiler unit you need to look at, even though it's a newer asset. Is it a PM? Is it not getting enough PM? Is it a contractor issue? Do we need to train our team a little bit better on how to maintain that asset? I would certainly re-up the contract on that air handler unit. I would pat the backs of the men and women who are working on that asset. It's doing great despite its age. So it's a great way to look at the effectiveness of your operations. If you've got the time, you can dig into this stuff. You just need to make sure your CMMS system can deliver those metrics. Analyze the sources of your downtime. Where's your downtime coming from? Downtime is a profit killer. If you're suffering from downtime or you need to improve your percentage of uptime, you got to analyze where it's coming from. And if you can't measure where your downtime is coming from, it becomes very difficult to battle that. So again, just use the metrics, the reports, the analytics that are available in your CMMS to help you make these good decisions. Don't waste the time. Again, I use my example of repotting plants here. So use this time to really help you make some progress. It's a great time to look at your CMMS if you have it. And other software evaluation. Take on new tasks. I'm a big believer in total productive maintenance, TPM. Maybe more specifically related to maintenance operations would be autonomous maintenance. But that's if you don't have TPM on your radar, it's a good time to analyze and there's all kinds of YouTube videos you can watch on that or read up on it. Take on initiatives, barcoding as an example, and there's a lot of different ones. If you don't really use a lot of barcoding, it's a great way to streamline operations. Look at the industrial Internet of Things, your sensors and so forth. Take a look at the many professional organizations. I'm a big fan of the Society of Maintenance and Reliability Professionals. It's a wonderful organization. But just don't waste the time. Use this to better your professional career, better your operations, better your organization around you. The work from anywhere, and that includes cloud software and mobility, that's here and I believe here to stay. I mean, it does great things. First off, it puts hyper focus on technology built on the cloud, the internet, the cloud. It supports social distancing, allowing us to work from home or work from our office. And because a lot of organizations are not having group meetings anymore, you might be in the building together, but you're doing your meetings with Zoom or whatnot. Avoid sharing computers, mobility. To have your CMMS, your maintenance operations in the palm of your hand, both live while you're wherever you are because you have connectivity, or offline as well if your operations are in areas where you may not have good connectivity. Cloud, full browser use from anywhere, whether you're at home because you're forced to work from home, you're on the road, you're traveling later, and I hate to say it, but you're on vacation, but you got to take a look at a critical work order. Cloud's here to stay. Anybody who has software that's not based on the cloud, and I used to get people arguing with me, we don't trust the cloud, it's not safe. Imagine if we did not have cloud software in this pandemic. It would be a very different story and even a much worse one than we have already. It's also, you've got software solutions, training resources, communication tools. Zoom is a good example. Online learning for your CMMS and otherwise. Take advantage. So mobile, you should have the capabilities close to the abilities of a regular browser in the palm of your hand, certainly for the tactical operational aspects. All your work orders, your parts, everything like that should be available. Essential versus non-essential work from home classification. Like, what's the status of your team? I've highlighted a column. I've got a list of my users. Wouldn't it be nice to know if you're adding your technicians to a work order, are they relegated to working from home? Or are they non-essential and they can only come in under special circumstances, or they're essential? Know your people. Know what their status and their class is to make it easier for you to manage them in this work from anywhere environment. Intelligent routing and notification. Solid workflow, escalation, and notification is essential. You're less face-to-face. Intelligence like this can really help. Also, 24/7 notification. That screen that I have there is an example of a configuration screen that if a work order comes in, this is done by a administrative level person that'll set this up, but if anybody creates a work order in your operation and it has a COVID-19 tag or maybe a safety-related tag on that work order, you can automatically associate your COVID-19 response liaison or officer. You can associate your safety officer. They automatically get added to the work order. They will automatically receive a notification via email or a chime on their mobile device that they are now tagged to this work order. So there's all kinds of ways to streamline how your CMMS can intelligently follow your operations. Take advantage of that. Communicate and document. Again, I talked about this a little earlier, but you got to make sure your CMMS has the proper drop-down list, the proper instructions. It's a great opportunity to rely on video, pictures, and printed documentation. Like that bottom screen there, the bottom of the screen, your step-by-step instructions have a link to a video showing that technician how to perform that task. Remember the aging workforce we talked about earlier. You may have people that can't come into the plant because they're immunocompromised. They have health issues. They're also going to retire at some point as well. You've got to capture those people's knowledge. You've got to capture that, how to change that filter blindfolded in a hurricane like that tech's been doing for the last 30 years. It's a great opportunity to do that. You're going to need to do it anyway, but rely on those videos, pictures, and printed documentation. Use your dashboard and other updates to keep the team informed. It's really helpful if you're not going to be seeing people face-to-face in the hallway, on the plant floor. Midterm. This is where we're getting into the thaw. This is where we are now. So this is going to pass. This pandemic is passing. This thaw is going to bring a new normal, and everybody is affected. What we do during this COVID-19 pandemic era, it's going to echo. It's a great time to optimize your CMMS to reflect this new era. And you're going to need to explain what you did during the pandemic. If you're slow, make sure you're ready to start up. So just a couple of slides in this midterm thaw phase that we're in right now. Optimizing your CMMS. So it's a whole new generation of work orders. Steps are going to be, this is here to stay. Do you have proper PP&E, standard operating procedures, sanitization processes as part of your step-by-step instructions of your PMs? If you don't, you got to add them and across the board. A good CMMS is going to allow you to add them globally to your PMs and to your corrective maintenance routines. You may have to set up even digital signatures to say that you're signing off that you perform these tasks. You're going to have to show what you did. Did you chip away at that work order backlog? How did you stay busy? So this is a summary of completed preventive maintenance work orders. One click, I ought to be able to show my superiors, anybody who needs to have visibility into what did we achieve during this COVID-19 pandemic era. If we were super busy, well, We're going to show that we were busy because we had a ton of work orders for regular operations, not to mention the extra work for this social distancing and PPE and sanitization. If we were not busy, well, we can show the good progress we made while we had the time to do it with the various reporting. And there's all kinds of ways to show those analytics, those metrics, those reports, to show what did our workforce do. This is a picture of one of our dashboard screens summarizing work orders by people, by what we did, breaking out the labor and so forth. So take advantage of the various reporting and analytics in your CMMS like we have in our Asset Essentials product here, so that you can show your superiors what you did and justify why you couldn't get to certain things if you were super busy. Plant startups. Rely on your CMMS to help you in this process. I've highlighted on the left-hand side of that screen, you can see there like contractor checklists. What are contractors going to have to do before they can come in the building? Document it. Create an SOP. Have the printed the documentation that you can print out all available directly from, this is our safety area, our standard operating procedure safety area. Also, you can have your job safety assessments, your lockout tagout procedures. Plant startup, both globally across the plant or specific production line startup plants, production line startup checklists. All that documentation can be contained within your CMMS. Same way you can have a job safety assessment or safety data sheets, but build out that documentation, have it available to appropriate staff. Get your restart right. This documentation is important. Knowing what you're going to do when your startup's going to get back to normal here. Cold starts can create headaches and risks, especially if not done correctly. Run tests, staggered stage startups that move to a full start. Be ready to minimize asset restart issues and malfunctions. You really want to avoid that waste and that rework. You're already in a diminished mode. You want to nail your startup, and we're getting back into it. Have your staff organized and mobilized, of course, within social distancing parameters. Really try to avoid unnecessary overtime when you're getting into that startup mode. And again, I don't want to profess to be an expert in startup processes, but I can say that a good CMMS will give you an opportunity to record and document that and have it be available to your appropriate teammates. Okay, we're going to do a recap, get into the long term, or what I like to call the new normal. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and put up our second of 3 polls. How would you assess your maintenance operations in the future? So what is the impact of COVID-19 done to you as you're continuing to look forward now? So the options range, and if you could take a moment to answer these, the options range from won't change how we run our maintenance operations at all, so you're kind of staying the same, will result in minor changes, will result in fairly extensive changes in the near term, but will maybe go back to the older ways when this pandemic is in the rearview mirror. And the last one is we're going to be different forever. Our team, our operations, the way we do our maintenance is going to be changed forever. So if I could ask you to take a moment to answer that particular question. So I see the results coming in. I'll leave the poll up here for a little bit longer. And interesting enough, I can tell you right off the bat, nobody is saying they're staying exactly the same as before. Everybody in the group is having at least some level of impact. The second option, the resulting in minor changes, is the majority right now. But the balance, which is the range of changes in the near term, kind of go back to normal, and then is about a quarter of you, and then our operations are changed forever is a quarter of you. So more than half of us are going to have fairly large changes forever. What we're learning in this pandemic and how we're being forced to work is going to be with us for a while. Okay, awesome. So thank you, everybody, for taking some time to answer that. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. And we're at the home stretch here. So the recap, the new normal. Well, number one, Make sure your CMMS is supporting you during this pandemic. We're finding how we're having to lean on technologies in different ways. I go back to Zoom all the time. Like, what would we do without Zoom, or if you're using a different version of this type of virtual meeting software, whatever it may be. I mean, it's become an essential tool, both in our personal lives, our children's, students' lives, and so forth. Your CMMS software better be supporting you in this pandemic, and not just this pandemic. What is the next curveball? You know, what's the next thing that's going to blindside us? Maybe it's an economic downturn in the future. Maybe it's, who knows? Maybe it's to help us if things get really busy. Your CMMS better be supporting you. And if it's not, take a look at what you're using and give us a call. You need to be thinking and being lean. And I use the word lean, efficiency, lean manufacturing, lean operations. You know, doing more with less. It's always fashionable. And it's not about maybe reducing the number of people we have working. It's just being really smart at what we do. Good CMMS software will help you be more efficient, and that's going to help you in both good times and bad times. So if you have a well-oiled CMMS system and you all of a sudden get really busy seasonally, maybe all of a sudden your industry is taking off, the way the pandemic has happened for organizations that make PPE and other essential products, you get blindsided with all of a sudden being really busy and you have lack of efficiency in certain areas. It doesn't really blend very well. So being lean is great when you are getting really busy. It's also really helpful when times aren't so good. If you can be as efficient as possible with your maintenance operations, it's proven to help you with your uptime. It's proven to help you avoid those stockouts. And those things are profit killers. So thinking and being lean, a well-implemented CMMS solution is always fashionable. The work from anywhere concept. Whoever would have thought that manufacturers would be working in an environment from home? I mean, you know, we routinely hear from our customers that non-essential staff are still participating, but will either partially or fully work from their house. Never would have thought it, but it's happening. And it's not all about working from home or working from anywhere in a pandemic. It's about being efficient and having access to your CMMS whenever and wherever you are. So mobility. If you're not embracing using a mobile device in your maintenance operations, you better start to take a serious look. In the old days, and I don't hear this as much, thankfully, you know, we would have clients or prospective clients say to us, well, we just don't want our team to have a mobile device while they're working. They're just going to play games and surf the internet. You know, the reality is these are tools no different than a wrench, screwdriver, multimeter, or a thermal camera. It's a tool they use to do their jobs better. So mobility becomes really, really important. Cloud-based software. I mean, you just cannot get by anymore without having access to your maintenance operations software from wherever you happen to be at that time. So this work from anywhere, you know, hopefully we're not going to be having our kids from school from anywhere from home much longer. But in the event you need to take a meeting because you have to work from your house for some reason, and you can do it, and you can look at your CMMS data. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to operate, and I really believe this is part of the new normal. And again, finally, don't waste the time. Everybody is in the same situation. Take advantage of this time. Take advantage of these operational improvements that you can make, which will really help drive better profitability, smoother operations, efficiency. This is a global situation. Your direct competitors, everybody in your industry is in the same boat. How you use this time and how you improve your operations will allow you to outperform your competition, both in the short term, midterm, and the long term. Just don't waste the time. So, and this will all be, when you download this presentation, We've got all kinds of resources. I know everybody's sort of getting inundated in COVID-19 related resources, but related to operations, maintenance operations, in that area, this could be some really valuable information for you to take a look at. So if you like, you can click on that link when you download this stuff and have access to this information. So I'm going to throw up another poll. This is the last poll. If you could just take a moment here, if you could answer if you'd like to receive more information. A lot of times when we do these presentations, we've got a wide variety of people on these calls. Some of them look at this and they see this stuff and they're like, oh my gosh, Paul, I have no idea where to even start at this. And that's fine. This is just to give you a taste of not only during a pandemic, but what you can do to improve your operations when we finally look at this in the rearview mirror. But we're happy to help answer questions and coach you through. If you're already just in a pretty good space, but you want to maybe take your maintenance operations to the next level, again, if it's appropriate, please go ahead and answer some of the questions, answer that poll that we see here. So I just give everybody just a little bit moment here to do that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just bear with me a moment here. So before I hand this over to Q&A, just a big thank you from me. We're going to go ahead and switch to a questions and answering mode. But Dude Solutions is a family of hundreds and hundreds of people dedicated to helping our clients improve their maintenance operations. We're suffering through this pandemic like everybody else. We're working from home like a lot of other people. We're having to homeschool our kids just like you all. But we're here to serve and support you. If you think that these solutions, these options and efficiencies that we talked about today might make sense to you, we're just ready to help. So I think with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Kevin for some questions and answers.
Well, thanks, Paul, for a very insightful and concise presentation. I see that a lot of you have already got questions to ask Paul, and that's great. Please continue to do so by typing your questions into the Ask a Question box on the screen. We'll get to as many as time allows. Questions that we don't get to today will be posted online with the archived version of this webcast. Remember to download a certificate of completion, a copy of the presentation, and other resources. Use the Event Resources tab on the left-hand side of your screen. All right, well, let's go right to our questions. I think you talked a lot about, Paul, about the kinds of things that people should be doing while they have the opportunity during the slowdown or shutdown. But do you have any kind of examples or advice around managing non-traditional maintenance projects? Are those software involved the same way traditional ones are?
They certainly can be. A lot of times we look at preventive maintenance routines as the methodical, either once a month or every 100,000 cycle counts or whatever the increment that says to do that PM. But a lot of customers will build PM routines, and you don't even call them preventive maintenance. They're just routines with step-by-step instructions to perform a project or an overall task. And it might be something that you only use once or twice, or maybe use once ever or once or twice a year, or maybe it's just sort of as needed. So a good CMMS will allow you to build out that really routine-type maintenance, with good tasks and instructions and videos. But the more ad hoc project-oriented stuff, you can build those out as well, and they can be in a variety of different structures in a good CMMS. Like we have a projects area in our product, or you can build out specialized one-off PMs.
Good, thank you. Here's a question about mobility, and that is when you're introducing mobility into a facility, what is the priority in terms of who gets to have the devices that we're talking about? Is it management? Is it management and technicians? Is it on the basis of seniority, or how do you see that kind of thing flowing through a facility?
That's a very good question. I'm going to answer it a couple different ways. Generically speaking, it's absolutely all of the above. In the old days, when I say the old days, I've created mobile versions in CMMS going back into the 90s. You used to have to essentially acquire hardware to give to your team. So there was like a sign-out process. You showed up for your shift, and you signed out a mobile device, and you turned it back in at the end of your shift. We're not seeing that nearly as much as you used to. A very, very small percentage of our customers, because everybody already has an Android or Apple iOS operating system device. And it's just an app. You download the app and you run it on there. It's secure, and it's cordoned off with appropriate security and permissions and all that kind of stuff. But it really, rather than say prioritize who does it, you really got to look at who should use it based on what are your hopes, wishes, and desires, your goals and objectives of where you're trying to optimize. I really believe that the technicians should be first, because there's nothing better than that technician walking up to an asset, scanning that asset, the barcode, having it automatically pull up that asset, and depending upon what you want to do you want to enter some meter readings? Do you need to look up an emergency shutdown procedure? Do you need to create a corrective maintenance work order, or pull up a preventive maintenance work order and have those step-by-step instructions and videos? So, basically replaces that paper that you're walking around with. From a supervisor standpoint, there's all kinds of uses for them. Make a request on the fly while they're walking around. Go ahead and reassign a work order to somebody else, or to see an emergency work order that just all of a sudden showed up that got tagged to your name. So I'm a big believer that everybody theoretically should have access to it. It really comes down to what are your goals and objectives of how you're trying to optimize your maintenance operations.
Good. Thank you, Paul. I have a follow-up question to that previous question about mobility. And the question is, do you find mobile devices are usually company issued, personally owned, or a fairly balanced mixture?
Well, as I was saying before, everybody seems to have, you still see the occasional flip phones. I always like when I see somebody still texting on a flip phone. They would obviously not be able to access Asset Essentials' native mobile app. But the vast majority of people do have them. And of course, you've got restrictions in certain types of organizations that they're not allowed to bring their personal devices into the plant floor. And you might be forced to acquire dedicated hardware to do that. Hey, if that's the way you want to go for it. But I'm not saying, I can't say what's the best way to do it. I can say that it seems to be the vast majority of customers that I interact with these days that trust their team to use their personal devices, again, if there's no restrictions for security reasons of bringing them into the plant.
Good, thank you. I have a question, and that is, do you think as a result of the COVID crisis, new functionality will be written into EAM systems, or is it more a matter of configuring possibilities that are already there in the software to fit these particular circumstances?
That's an excellent question. I think it's definitely more on the configuration side. All the examples I went through today were based on existing functionality that's been around CMMS for quite a while. So you're just taking advantage of capabilities. Intelligent routing that we talked about earlier, automatically notifying certain people if, say, a COVID-19 work order comes in. Whether it's COVID-19 or it's a standard slip and fall OSHA violation, if you want that safety officer in the loop, you can use that type of capability. What I do think is happening is it is definitely driving more improvements to, say, the mobile devices, the mobile apps. It's also driving things like maybe more around IoT, where remote sensoring to alert you even if you're not in your plant and getting those work orders into your CMMS. So it might be more adjacent to CMMS that we're seeing functionality improvements, but more, I think it's definitely more configuration related.
Good. That's very interesting. Next question. With EAM and CMMS systems, to what extent are they now, in a comprehensive way, beginning to incorporate machine health or process data, like you say, from IIoT and with the ubiquitous Ethernet, in order to achieve predictive maintenance? Do you think that we're making progress in that extent, or is that something still in the future?
Definitely making progress. Now, there's two sides to that. There's the physical world and there's the digital world. The digital world's where the CMMS lives, the software. You know, Asset Essentials, I can refer to us, have and has had for 20 years a quote-unquote meter reading based preventive maintenance engine behind it. So a human can type in how many hours did this asset run today, what's the cycle count, what's the temperature, pressure readings, that type of stuff. You can do it in your mobile device, you can do it in the regular browser. So good CMMS has been creating preventive and corrective maintenance work orders based on that type of usage and meter reading type data. It's just been done largely by a human typing in a value into a screen in the CMMS. Where we're seeing the biggest improvements is in the availability and the affordability of the physical world, the sensors. You really can't acquire a new asset anymore that is not going to deliver you some sort of electronic data, usage, alarms, and so forth. There are all kinds of sensors that you can purchase that can be retrofit on aging assets and deliver that data to the cloud and get consolidated to an IoT platform. That's the physical world. CMMS lives in the digital world. So we're starting to see more and more improvements. Are we there where it's happening everywhere? No, by no means. It's still, you've got challenges on the physical world to have the expertise to retrofit those assets. But making the connection to your CMMS, like Asset Essentials, that's becoming easier and easier because we just have to, if we can be delivered that data electronically, and it's pretty easy data. It's an asset ID. It's what is the reading, pressure, temperature, run hours, cycle count, a date and a time and a value. You get that into your CMMS, and then good things can happen from that, primarily in terms of generating a preventive or a corrective maintenance work order.
Great, thanks. I would just add that vibration is a very interesting parameter for sensors as well, because it really mimics the way people intuitively realize that there's something wrong with the machine just by sensing the vibration of it.
You bring up a good point. You bring up a good point, Kevin. And you know what? One of the things I should be clear about: we don't care what in the CMMS, we don't care what the metric is. You can capture virtually any numerical data. It's all about whether it's vibration or temperature or voltage or pressure. You set the thresholds, or you set what's going to trigger the PM or the corrective maintenance work order to happen, and bam, let it create. So yeah, you're right, because all these new sensors coming out these days measure some wonderful information that can really help drive good maintenance.
Good, thanks, Paul. Next question. You talked quite a bit and quite eloquently about the need to capture knowledge from people that are close to retirement age. Can you mention any specific techniques for doing that or technologies that can be of assistance in that regard?
Yes, and one thing I'll tell you is I personally have done a number of lectures on the changing and aging workforce over the past year. So in our Dude Solutions resources area, there'll be links to the webinars where I've lectured on this to give you a lot more information. But I'll tell you, one of the best ways to do it is you just take your good old trusty iPhone or your Android phone, and you walk up and you just make a video of that technician that can change that filter blindfolded in a hurricane. And you have that gentleman or that woman, you have them just kind of talk you through the process. You record them doing it. Nothing's better than capturing, seeing an expert perform a task. Do it step by step and associate those videos as step-by-steps in the instructions of the PM. And you can do it with still photos as well. So there's probably more formal and organized ways to do it, but if you can just capture what that person's been doing just by rote memorization for years. It's a great way to document that aging workforce's legacy. They leave when they leave that organization, they're still there, and you can see how they did it. But yeah, there's a lot of other ways to capture it, but just take advantage of these basic, simple, and very easy to use capabilities of your iPhone, and then it's easy to get that associated to those PMs within your CMMS.
Good. So we've talked about people who are getting ready to leave the workforce. Now we have a question from someone who feels that new technology training for the millennials should be about basic topics, for example, pneumatic systems. And I think they want you to agree with them that that's the way to go. What do you see as some of the best ways to train people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The ironic thing is, first off, everybody can teach and everybody can learn. So that, yes, you take the youngsters that come in, those millennials, and hopefully they come in with a good foundation. We talk about this in that other webinar that I run. The community college programs that are available and these trade school programs, they come in. Hopefully they've got pneumatics and all those kinds of skills at a basic level when they come in. But they're going to have to spend some time with those veterans. Nothing is better than them being able to have that little video because, again, in this pandemic era we're in, they may not be face-to-face with that seasoned veteran who knows that stuff. Likewise, those millennials are an excellent opportunity to help the aging workforce better understand how to use a mobile device or how to use browser-based software or whatever the technology is. So, yeah, I absolutely agree. And again, I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox here, but I've studied this stuff quite a bit. As a country, we went a long time from when we stopped having shop classes in our high schools and those industrial arts type of stuff, where it just fell off the radar for a generation of workers. And fortunately, over the past, say, decade, as we started to see the changing and aging workforce, we're seeing better opportunities. I'm a big believer, like our local community college system here in Maine where I live, they're doing an excellent job at making those types of skills available. But you're absolutely right, the person who put that question, I'm absolutely in agreement with it. Use your CMMS to give those instructions where they can, because that person who has those skills, if they're not around, hey, nothing's better than watching a video of them performing that task.
Good. We're coming to near the close. I think we've got time for maybe two more questions. It was interesting. I and others found it interesting the way you talked about criticality indexes. Can that same kind of parameter be applied to spare parts for essential or high priority assets?
There is probably ways to configure. First off, your associated parts, foreign asset, the bill of materials, whatever you want to call it, is readily available throughout a good CMMS system. So you will know what parts you need when you go to perform that PM. You know what you will have on hand, on reserved, and so forth to really streamline that process. You don't want to have to walk across the room and to a part crib only to find out that part's not there. In terms of tying that in, for reordering and whatnot, based on that criticality, I'd have to study that question a little bit more to see if it can go beyond. But again, I think the important point here is identifying your critical assets. It's obvious when you're walking around your plant, but it's not so obvious when you're looking at a whole bunch of work orders. And then when you're looking at those critical work orders based on that RIME index, that calculated criticality, then to have other auxiliary information that you're going to need to perform, whether it be a corrective or preventive maintenance acts, CM or PM, is to know the parts you have or the meter readings you can track on that and so forth. Directly adjacent to that, a good CMMS like Asset Essentials will make all that available.
Good. Our final question for today, do you think it's effective to use a CMMS as a central repository of emergency disaster plans? Is that the proper place to keep that information?
It certainly can be, and we have a lot of clients that do that. Now, there are dedicated systems around that, but what we found is our customers were tracking things like standard operating procedures, job safety assessments, safety data sheets, really safety programs in general, PP&E policies, and so forth. Because a lot of times you need to associate that documentation to, say, specific PMs. Job safety assessment, lockout tagout procedure, safety data sheets are good examples. So it really doesn't matter the type of safety program that you're tracking. It could be asset specific, it could be function specific, it could be overall plant-based. It doesn't matter. It would just be part of this repository in our quote-unquote safety programs section of Asset Essentials. The key, and of course, with the ability to have when should I review this documentation, what PMs is it associated to, who's responsible for it, and so forth. So that's why we built that in our Asset Essentials solution. It's because that data is so closely related to maintenance operations. So yes, we absolutely can solve that. We in fact do for our clients.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's been a real pleasure. And I want to thank our audience for the great questions. I'd also like to extend special thanks to our sponsor, Dude Solutions, for sponsoring today's event. Now that we're just about done, we'd like to hear how we did. The exit survey will pop up on your screen as soon as the webcast ends. Please take a moment to complete it because we use this information to improve our webcasts. Finally, on behalf of Plant Engineering and Dude Solutions, I'd like to thank you for attending. This concludes our webcast. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.